So today we're going to be talking about, all right, so for context, today is the last day of June. So tomorrow is officially the beginning of Q3. And when we talk about Q3, the biggest thing about Q3 is preparation for Q4, which for ecom
Yeah,
is the biggest. That's the Super Bowl of ecom. That's when people buy the most, people spend the most. Q3 is still a good quarter, so don't jump it being excited about Q4. But right now, we want to talk about Q3 in relation to Q4 and how exactly to prepare for to best utilize Q3 to get the most out of your Q4.
yeah. And that's a great point. You mentioned that it is the Super Bowl of e-commerce. And in Q3, like you mentioned, I think you did a great point by mentioning that it's the end of June, because if you remember last month, Google rolled out a lot of new functionalities. You have the Google Marketing Live. And basically
Yeah,
for the last 6 months, Google has been rolling out new functionalities. And a lot of, brands and advertisers and CMOs are thinking, should I test this now? You kind of have that FOMO effect. And we're here to tell you, if you want to start testing new functionalities, whether that be AI Max, whether that be Search
sure,
Max,
Max.
whether that be some of those new functionalities inside of PMax, you want to do it now. This is the time, right? Google just rolled them out. If they're available in your account, check them out, test them. But you don't want to be testing for too long, right? You don't want to go ahead into Q4 thinking, hey, am I going to actually get a 10, 15% increase in revenue with this Search Max? No, you want to have that data. So this is what we recommend: making those, taking setting budget aside to leverage, your future opportunities in Q4. I'm going to give you one example. If you've been running your Performance Max campaigns with assets for the last 6 months and you're hesitant on, hey, should I remove the assets now? Well, now is the time. Now is when you want to make that experiment so you can get that data and you head into Q4, with that knowledge of, proven and tested methods, right? Also want to be looking at your Q4 strategy for last year inside of the account. But yeah, that would be my biggest, like, hey, warning, do not test in Q4, because we have brands coming into Q4, still don't have an idea on what their offer is, specifically on the Google Ads type, still don't know which are their core products. And you see this as well, Yana, when
Definitely.
Q4 starts to come, you have a lot of brands that are changing agencies, right? And
Mm,
because preparation, and Yana, you can probably speak on this. I know you've
mm.
probably picked up a few clients right before Q4 happens. Everyone's in the market for a new agency, and that's due to bad preparation. So whether you're a CMO, an advertiser, or running ads in house, be prepared, because yeah, that's when a lot of the mistakes happen.
Let me actually speak on that just a moment.
Yeah,
So, if you're going to be changing agencies or looking for better people to run your ads, this is actually the perfect time because you don't want to be going through setting up infrastructure in Q4 when you're starting up with when you're supposed to be leveraging everything that was built in Q3. So, if you want to make those big decisions, if you want to break things and fix things, this is
yeah,
actually the perfect time to do it because when it's Q4, like we said, it's the Super Bowl, so it's game time. So that's when you're supposed to be maximizing on all of the learnings that
yeah,
you did throughout July, August, and September. So thank you for actually bringing that up. This is whether you want to leave me or at my agency or try somebody else, this would actually be the perfect time to do that. So in terms of, I just want to touch a bit on something that you mentioned about
yeah.
looking at what happened last year in Q4 with your setup and this year in Q4, do you think there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of the implementation of PMax this Q4 or during Q4? A lot of differences between what was done last year and what was done this year.
Yeah, I think maybe not across every account, but one thing that we've seen in the last year is Google's creative capabilities have improved. For example, probably you would say a year ago, everyone except the guys in the info product world would say, hey, YouTube sucks as a platform. We're not getting good results, or you would have to spend a high budget. Well, now we're seeing in more and more smaller accounts that, demand gen is actually generating results, whether that be through images or, especially on the YouTube side. So I believe this Q4 for Google Ads, there's gonna be an increase in the amount of creatives being used, right? So I believe a lot more brands are gonna just start duplicating what they used on Meta and applying it to the Google recommendations. and testing out that creative element. Another reason for that as well is because when you look at the PMax script by Mike Rhodes, Google has a very interesting way of always getting at least one conversion for display at a very high return on ad spend, which gives you the insight. Oh, display is actually, I always have this debate with clients. I don't believe Google is getting high conversions on display at such a high return on ad spend, especially when it's in PMax. But yeah, that's my take. More brands are going to utilize creative and video more to promote their Q4 and their Black Friday, Cyber Monday offers.
Yeah, for me, I've been preaching this for years at this point now, that in terms of creatives on Google Ads, for me, it's very top of funnel. So it's very nurturing that relationship with the client, brand recognition, getting your name out there. And by the time that they're ready to buy, they're in the middle or close to the bottom of your funnel. So it's being in front. So it's not necessarily about getting conversions from your creatives, but going to your point about creatives being a very big part of this Q3 and Q4. Yes, Google has implemented so many campaign types and assets and infrastructure to help you get stronger on the creative side. It's essentially becoming a mini Meta in terms of creative.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the actual strategy, like how to carry out the strategy for creative. So one thing that you mentioned already is taking what's already working on Meta and maybe putting it into demand gen and seeing how exactly that's going to work out with your clients as well. But I also want to talk about the types of creatives, right? Because everybody is really heavy on UGC. Some people are really stuck on the more formal studio setup type of content. But I feel like those aren't wrong, but this is a very good time to experiment and also try something that is less edited, less in your face, and easy to produce. Because one of the biggest friction points that I always get with clients in terms of creating content is creating content takes time. So you need to script, you need to plan, you need to have the cameras, you need to have editing and the knowledge and all of that. Try something that is very low res, lo-fi, not low res, sorry, but more lo-fi, where it's just maybe talking about your products, talking about the advantages of your products, just being a human, because people are so inundated with the highly processed, attention grabbing, super cut things these days that you find where people have a conversation, just like the people watching this, where it's not really that much edited. It's just us having a conversation with you. People are actually starting to resonate with that more than the super edited thing, because that's become the normal. So in terms of testing out creatives, test everything, test the normal, test the super edited, and see what exactly works for your specific product and what angles work. Test everything. Going back to the conversation about testing so many things in Q3 and preparing that for Q4 and then really ramping up the spend for that in Q4. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. In terms of the video, you have Barry Hart that says make ugly ads. And he actually that phrase actually became very, famous in the industry because everyone was making very polished creative. But I will say that I feel like in Google, the ads have always been ugly. I don't know if you agree with me. Like I never saw a display ad and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. And I feel like if you're, making creatives specifically for Google, make them ugly, right? So by ugly, you slap your image, your offer, your text, very straightforward. If we actually talk about the creatives and where these creatives are displaying, I think that's what we need to think about, in Google. And this is where from Meta, it's very different. Yes, you want to take your top performing videos from Meta and put them in Google. That's a no-brainer. But on the images, it's 50-50, right? Because what's gonna look great on the Meta feed is not gonna look good on, I don't know, BBC's news top right section where Google gives you that 30% page, 30% space so you can put your ad. Your ad may not look as well, right?
Yeah, placement is very important.
Yeah, because Google really messes up the placement. And I see this often happens with clients and they're like, why are you running my ad on this website? I'm like, I'm not. Like, this is Google automatic placements. You have, Performance Max. So I would add to that, take a look at the placements and actually see how your ad looks on one of those placements. So you can then, make sure that you're highlighting the most important information. And when it comes to, testing different videos, well, yeah, on the image side, keep it simple. And when it comes to videos, yes, test what's working on Meta in terms of, UGC, great videos. But always keep in mind that the user that you're targeting in Google is a bit more informed than your user on Meta, right? And this is where I agree with Jan in terms of um, just having a more conversational style video, more direct, and giving more just like benefits and USPs in terms of, instead of like trying to quote unquote show off. This is one of the reasons why YouTube always struggled, why e-commerce brands always struggled on YouTube, is because they would make videos that are all about the product. Like they never even cared about the consumer. And that's changing now. So in your video and creative production for Google, take into account that the user is more informed than he is on Meta, and that you have to give him the information you have to meet him where he's at in terms of his awareness stage, right? For using the correct terms.
So one thing, so I have something that I call a scroll stop bank, and it's basically this library that I have whenever I'm scrolling down the feed or doom scrolling, and you have those days where you're just on social media scrolling, and this is organic content. Whatever makes me stop for a second, I always try and figure out why exactly this thing made me stop and watch it. It might not even be a product. It's just a normal video. Why exactly did I stop and watch this specific video? And then I put it into a bank, and sometimes I put it into a category where I'm like, this would be good for fashion brands, or this would be good for a supplement brand. This would be good for fitness. So you might actually want to start doing that as well, where you also start to analyze your own behaviors and what exactly is making you stop at certain points in time when you're on your own feed. And that would be a good place to start. But the second part of that is some of the best ads that I've ever seen personally and that have moved me are ads where I never realized they were an ad until I saw the skip ad thing pop up. So the skip ad button would come up. So I'm actually watching this and I'm interested. And it's like this person is talking on something, and after that, the skip and ad comes. But by then, I'm so into this, I'm just like, let me watch it. And sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes I'm just like, all right, let me actually click into the ad. But besides the fact that I clicked that ad, there's also the fact that they were so good that they've built this mini relationship with me where the next time I bump into their content, whether it's organic or an ad again, I will be like, these guys again. And it shortens that sales cycle. It shortens that distance between the buyer not knowing you and that conversion. So in terms of actually coming up with creative, you want to analyze your own behaviors, and you also want to sometimes just pop up and be human. So that's my 2 cents. So now I actually want to take the conversation in a bit of a different direction, which is phases. This builds on what we talked about at the beginning of the video, where Q3 is a time of actually breaking things, right? So we want to talk about it from a technical standpoint. Fran, do you want to weigh in on that in terms of learning phases?
Yeah, I think that's one of the parts that brands mess up a lot. So, okay, you got it down, right? You know that you should be testing different campaign types. You know that you need to be testing different creatives, but we're in PPC, right? So you're paying for every test. So the first thing is set budget aside for those tests. And when it comes to budget pacing and ramping up towards Q4, because that's the part that I really want to dive into, is how do you prepare your budget for Q4? Let me give you an example. If you're spending 2K a month, it's not because Q4 is in October, you're going to magically spend 20K on that month, right? Like, yes, you can, there is demand, but you have to gradually get the campaign to that point. And this is something that we've done on fewer brands, where we started at 5K, and then in their peak season, we would hit PK and spend. It's all through planning, right? Like you need to have a forecast. Like that's something that Yana and I have been pushing a lot, brands and, just, the owners and CMOs that we coach. You need a forecast, right? As a media buyer, if you tell me to spend as much as you want, I'll spend it. But you need to plan, okay, Q3, this is the amount of budget I want to have. And then a few weeks prior to Q4, you want to start gradually increasing your budget by, around 20 to 25% based on your performance. Of course, if the campaign is not performing, you don't want to be increasing your ad spend. But the budgeting side, you don't want to increase your budget when everyone is in the market, right? Especially in Google, you can kind of project. So if you're, and this is the one of these example, if you're in the toys industry, then you know that December is your entire year. Your December is your entire year. So you don't start on the 1st of December, hey, let's set up the budget to $1,000 a day. You probably want to start in October and then gradually get there as long as you're profitable, so that when the time comes, you're already competitive, and everyone who was late won't have such a good placement. I think in terms of budgeting, one big mistake I see from brand owners is thinking that Google can scale up as fast as Meta. And I feel like that's a very big problem, because in Meta, you can go from 25K to 200K in 1 month. That's Meta's way of doing it. I don't run Meta ads anymore, so I'm always impressed by the scale at which the Meta guys can scale. And then on cases where I'm working on the other side, which is Google, the client will come to me and say, hey, I want to scale Google just as fast as Meta. And this is where I'm often like, we can scale Google, but not at the same rate because of seasonality, keyword volume, and how the algorithm works. Google does not react well to a 500% budget increase on the same day, right? So those are some of my experiences, Yan and I. How about you? Have you seen similar things? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree?
All right. So I just want to add on to the technical part a bit. We've talked about this before, but for the benefit of people who haven't watched our previous episodes. So Google has what's called a learning phase, where whenever you change something in a campaign, Google, sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's slower, but usually Google takes about 14 days to adjust to changes that you've made.
Yeah.
So that's called a learning phase, where the algorithm is now trying to figure out, oh, okay, I've got this new input. What exactly is the user, which is you, trying to achieve with this? And then within those 14 days, it's basically testing out different things until it comes to a place of equilibrium. And sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. It depends on the quality of your inputs. So keeping this in mind, that the learning phase is usually 14 days, but sometimes it can take up to a month to really make it work. We've actually worked on a project where I think the learning phase took 30, almost 60 days, but then when it started kicking in, it really, really kicked in. And it really ramped up. So sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. And you don't want to get to a point where, like Frantoni was talking about, where you try and increase the budget by 200 to 500% to play catch up in Q4, because that will research at the learning phase. So even budget. So even if you're increasing budget, that can actually reset, because now Google is trying to figure out, all right, I've got all of this money that I didn't have. So where exactly do I put it? Who exactly does this money go to? Whereas if you're going through that gradual process that Frantoni was talking about, you are seeing the results in real time, and you're seeing that if I add more to this particular campaign, if I add more to top of funnel, it actually impacts the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel after like 2 weeks. So let me really increase on money on creatives and get more people into the funnel, so that by this time, by 3 weeks, I've got double the people that I used to have. All of that incrementality testing is very important. Whereas if you just throw a bunch of money at Google, or throw new settings, or throw new campaigns into it, you restart that learning phase. And if you're unlucky, you could be one of the people where it takes 30 days or 60 days. And this is your busiest period. Basically, everybody who did it better, who did it the proper, slow way, the gradual way, the way that everybody hates, because everybody wants to see results now. But everybody who took the time to go through the proper channels and the proper process, they're starting to see results. And you've basically wasted time and you've wasted money. You will get a return, but not as much as if you had done it through this incrementality testing. So I think on that one, we are 100% in sync. We're 100% aligned on that one.
I would like to add one thing, Yana, before we move on to our next point, because I already hear the naysayers saying, okay, what about the big budgets, right? This is applicable when you're spending, 10, 20, 30K a month. But if you're spending 6 figures a month, right, your learning phase is not going to be 14 days, right? If you're spending $10,000 on a test, what's going to take that small brand a month, maybe going to take you 3 days, right? So be mindful of your budget, because your learning phase is influenced by your budget. If you're spending $5,000 a month, it's going to take you a longer time to get Google up to speed. If you're spending 100K, then it's going to take you a shorter amount, but you can also burn a lot more budget testing. So be also mindful of the allocation that you're testing. And even when you're increasing, have a set number, right? Please, and this is a general info for all the CMOs, stop saying we can spend as much as we can as long as we hit X, Y, and Z, because 80% of the time, it's not true, right? Because as you spend more, your cost increases, your operational costs increase, CPA increases in the account, and what was a good return back then is not so much on the front end, right? So this is where planning, even though it's a tedious task, is really important. We're really giving you guys the best advice you can have a successful for. Yeah, definitely take notes. Yana, you want to talk about our next point?
It's funny when you mentioned that. I actually got a point that I wanted to. So about the
Please do.
naysayers, right? I've actually got a point
Yeah.
about the naysayers. So I know that there are people that are probably going to be like, sometimes the learning phase can take even less time than that. Sometimes an account can actually make money within 7 days. That is possible, but as a responsible practitioner, you want to work with the rule, not the
Yeah.
exception. So it's very possible that sometimes the learning phases are extremely quick. Like you can optimize an account in such a way that within 30 days, you're making proper bank with an account. It happens. But I usually see people online posting those case studies where they're like, everybody says the learning phase takes this long, but within a month, we did this. But they're just showing you their best case scenario. Don't forget that they've probably got 9 other clients that didn't have that specific learning phase that they're not showing you. But this is the one that looks the best when you're trying to pitch to getting new clients. But that's the exception and not the rule. So as a responsible practitioners, we're telling you that it usually takes this amount of time. It can be faster, but that's when you're lucky, and don't assume that you're lucky.
Yeah, well said, Yana. Thank you for reinforcing that, because like you said, especially when we see case study posts on LinkedIn, and we post case studies as well, right? You're posting a great example, but specifically on certain case studies, like you pointed out, it's hiding the back end that this is not common, right? Like this is they're preaching something that's not common as if it was. And if you're listening to us because, one, you're trying to get better at Google Ads, you want to get a better understanding so you can manage your practitioner or your agency better. And this is why we're here telling you, be responsible. It's not the sexy advice you're going to get on LinkedIn. It's the real advice you want to hear if you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars in Google Ads.
True. All right. So next point is we want to talk about attribution. So we want to talk about conversion tracking and attribution alignment. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I mean, you already saw my face. Conversion tracking, it's crazy because everyone talks about conversion tracking. Like we all talk about it, and to this day, I audit accounts spending $40,000, $50,000 a month with multiple conversion actions set as primary, and they've been doing this for months. And every single time, I'm like, how did you guys let this happen? Like, even as a practitioner, now I'm not saying, hey, you can't have a mistake, a double tag. But when you have 4 conversion actions set up and they've been running for months and you're reporting on inflated data, it usually always breaks my heart. And I have a real example. I was recently at an account that spent about $20,000 to date. And in the account, the return on ad spend was a 1.5. So I was like, all right, this is not good. When I looked at the conversion action, they were counting double conversions, which means that they were spending 20K at like a 0.6 return on ad spend. And when I saw that, it really broke my heart, because I'm like, you guys just burned all this money. Doomsday stories, but it's very common, right? And if you're listening to this and you're preparing for Q4, I would recommend you check your conversion action now and then check it at the start of Q4 and make sure that that's aligned, because what you don't want to happen is ending up doubling your budget on inflated data, and then 6 months down the line, guys like Yana and I myself come in and tell you, hey, you didn't make that much money in Q4.
Exactly.
And it happens a lot, guys. Like, really check your conversion action tracking. Like, Yana, I'll let you add there as well.
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned this on a previous episode, where the worst case scenario that I've ever seen of this is an account that was running for 12 years without them knowing that all of the traffic that they thought they were getting, all of the conversions. And I know that Google changes over years, but you could just see that this account, for the most part, had been untouched because the person that owned the company had a person that was running the account where it was one of those situations where it was like a trust me, bro, I can do this. And that trust me, bro, I think maybe in the first days they did get results because Google didn't have that much competition in the beginning.
Yeah.
But then nothing really changed over the 12 years and you could just see it going down and down. But the reason that that person stayed on is because that the business itself got bigger and bigger. So it kind of masked the chaos that was going on inside of
Yeah.
Google because it wasn't the only platform that they were relying on. But 12 years, for 12 years, because this was before I had my own agency and was working for
Yeah.
different agencies. It was when they came to us for a holistic audit of different things. And then I was just told, hey, just check their Google ads and see what's happening. And I was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. You don't even understand the chaos that's in here.
That's
Attribution,
our story.
we talk about it a lot. If you can afford it, get a third-party platform, get Triple Whale, get Hyros, if it makes financial sense to you, and get a look into what's happening into your account that's independent from Google themselves or Meta themselves telling you that this is how much you're making. It's always good to have a third-party integration that tells you, that screens the data and tells you exactly what's happening in your account and tells you that this much is coming from this particular channel and this much is coming from this particular channel, and they don't have any skin in the game. So you know that what you're seeing is probably 99%, maybe even 100% truer than these platforms self-reporting. So attribution, attribution, attribution.
Yeah. And just to add an attribution, because, as a Google Ads practitioner, you're often collaborating with other agencies, other media buyers. So specifically the Meta guys, we often talk about them because then it's all within Meta and Google. And one thing I would point out in attribution is be mindful of how you attribute Google, right? So what's gonna always happen is you're gonna either install Triple Whale or Hyros, right? And this is when you're spending multiple, maybe 30, 50K a month on both platforms. You're spending at least 6 figures on, buying, and you want to start getting a better idea of what's really happening. Well, you'll always notice that, Google will either over report compared to Triple Whale or Hyros or under report. In a lot of cases, Google will look terrible. And it's important that you keep in mind the view that you're looking at Googling, right? So Google has data-driven attribution. Instead of Triple Whale, instead of Hyros, you have first click, last click, linear, and then they all have their own style of data-driven attribution with like AI and stuff. And when you're running ads on both platforms, especially for Q4, right? Because this is for the preparation, you need to know which is the platform that will bring you the highest leverage, right? A lot of times we have brands that spend a lot of money on Meta, not because it's better, but it's just because it's easier for them to understand. And they don't want to go through the hassle of, either getting a good Google Ads practitioner or agency or just trying to learn themselves. And Google looks better on last click, Meta looks better on first click, right? And not 100% of the time. So that's important, right? It's important because your Meta guy is going to report Meta being the top platform, spending the most. And then on a first click basis, Google will look terrible. So as a CMO, brand owner practitioner, you need to look at the different attribution models to understand the role each platform plays in and understand that you'll never have the same return on ad spend for that platform on 5 different attribution models, right? So you have to decide on which one suits you and which one is the closest to what you actually see coming inside of the bank account, right? Because that's the ultimate attribution, is money that you actually made versus money that you actually spent. So I think that that's really important to point out for the guys out there.
Very true. One thing that I do want to mention, I know we, at the beginning of this episode, well, before the episode started, we actually talked about, we're going to limit the talk of AI for this episode. But I want to talk about AI in relation to Google, which is Google Ads, Google AI overviews, right? Which is, at this point, has become a real thing.
Yeah.
It takes up a significant portion of traffic. More and more, I am seeing that whenever I search for something, whatever it is, if it doesn't take me directly to the Google Shopping page, then I'm going to see this huge ass paragraph talking about that thing and having multiple links within it before you see the ads. So maybe in the next episode, we can really get into detail a bit about how to actually start to appear on these new formats like Google AI Overview. So how to be more present there, how exactly to format your website and your content and your accounts to try and appear more and more and be suggested more and more in terms of Google AI Overviews. But I just wanted to mention that in line with the talk that we're having about preparing for Q4, this is the time to figure those formats out. This is the time to actually put your head down and be like, how exactly does this work? How is my traffic being affected? Because we know in general, even from an SEO perspective, it looks like clicks have gone down 58%. 58%, yeah. That's the average.
That's huge.
That is huge. So that means whatever traffic, the 100 people that used to click your ads, only 42 are clicking not just your ads, your website in general. So that's SEO and all of that. So impressions are not down. So impressions are still like this, but clicks are going down because of things like AI overviews. And those are formats that you'll have to master because they're unavoidable at this point. Those are the first things that you see. So it's not experiments anymore. It's almost, I think, worldwide at this point. So it's not just a USA thing where Google releases usually get targeted to the USA market and then everybody else later. So Q3 is the time to figure out how is this impacting my business? How do I leverage it? How do I figure this out before everybody else has figured it out? Same thing goes for AI modes. I've found myself whenever I'm on Google searching for something and the AI overview pops up and I'm thinking to myself, do I want to go through 3 or 4 other things that are below this? I just click AI mode and then everything is consolidated in there. If I'm doing it and I am a person that is selling you ads, right? That means, because this is us being honest, right? So if I, as a person that actually sells these services, I'm doing that, that also means that within my own services, I need to figure out how to make my customers appear in that. And that also means that you as well have to figure out a way to make your products and your business appear in those formats as well, because slowly, not even slowly, fast, people are changing the way that they search. People are changing the ways that they look for information. And yeah, maybe for another episode, but I just wanted to put that there, that in line with figuring things out, this is the time. Don't do it in Q4.
That's really important. And like you said, you probably sneak peeked at least 2 episodes. You talked about, Google becoming more like Meta. And then you're also talking about AI overview. So those are 2 episodes that are in the books, guys. We'll definitely, talk about those topics because Google has changed. I'm hearing more and more as well on my end, just to finish on it. AI overview is really hurting, some brands and businesses SEO. Yan and I has the way to be relevant and appear there, right? Because our job as practitioners is, one, to inform you on real-time changes and how to overcome them, but also face them before you do, overcome them, and come back with the solutions, right? So yeah, we have some ideas, we have some suggestions, also have some technical setups that we want to share with you. Like I said, that's for a further episode. But for this one, guys, these are your main things to look at when you're preparing for Q4, right? So definitely a lot of gems in this episode, a lot of actionable advice that you can implement right away. So definitely, listen to this 2 times if you have to, but at least we warned you. Conversion tracking and make sure that it's set up.
Yeah, this is the home of honesty. We're pretty much out of time, but real quick, let's just run through a quick checklist of getting ready for Q4 within Q3. Take it away.
Yeah, so quick checklist: campaign hygiene. Make sure that your campaign structure is set up. Make sure that your creatives are up to date as well. And then the final thing is tracking, right? I would put tracking at the top. So fix your tracking, fix your campaign structure, and then fix your creatives and your offer. Like that's in that order, right? And then the ultimate one is, once you have those 3 set, so that's your foundation, then you go on to the gradual budget scaling method, right? But don't reverse engineer it and start scaling without having your foundation laid.
And that's all she wrote. I have nothing to add to that. So once again, thank you very much for joining us on another episode of Clicks and Commerce. If you watched the episode to the end, please like, please subscribe. If you've got topics that you also want us to discuss, which we will add to the list of the ones that are coming up that are going to be very exciting, put them in the comment section wherever you're watching this, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on YouTube, or if it's on a podcast, do the same thing, and do follow us on our LinkedIn. I think that's our primary channel. So do follow us on social media as well. Fran?
Yeah, guys, Yana and I said it all. Follow us on LinkedIn. We'll be, posting shorts. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're dropping new videos every week. Yes, we took a break, but we have some really exciting episodes, and it's been 6 months of Google Ads, and we've been covering all of the most exciting updates for the past 6 months. And yeah, there's so much more. So once again, thank you for watching, and yeah, like and subscribe.
All right. See you on the next one. Cheers.
See you guys.